To the outside world, I'm known as the untouchable third young master of the Vance family. But behind the closed doors of the Vance Corporation, every single shareholder with half a brain secretly calls me the living Grim Reaper. Just to stay alive, I was devouring financial reports at age 3 and playing God with venture capital by 8. Piece by piece, I stripped my own biological father of all his real power, turning him into a glorified corporate mascot by the time I hit 12. And I didn't stop there. I forcefully twisted my gentle, intellectual eldest sister into a ruthless, cold-blooded money-making machine by age 15. Now, you're probably wondering why a filthy rich, second-generation heir like me was sweating bullets and grinding this hard. It's because the exact second I transmigrated into this twisted world as a literal fetus, a crazy, true and fake young master counterattack system hardwired itself into my brain. The system flat out told me I was the fake heir, a dirty little cuckoo bird, stealing the magpie's nest. The prophecy was clear. The year I turned 18, the true young master who had been eating dirt and suffering endless torment at the absolute bottom of society would make his grand return. He was destined to unleash a psychotic revenge plot against me, frame me for things I didn't do, and ultimately manipulate everyone into betraying and abandoning me, leaving me to get violently flattened by a truck and bleed out on the street on some miserable rainy night. So, I sharpened my blades, prepped my army, and calculated every single agonizing step. I ruthlessly stacked my defense towers all the way up to level 99, gripping a royal flush tight enough to utterly nuke half the economy of Oakhaven City. I swirled my wine glass, coldly counting down the seconds until my fated nemesis showed his face. I swore, the moment that true young master dared to bear even a single fang at me, I'd mercilessly crush him with the brutal hammer of reality. But then, on the exact day of my 18th birthday, my father, who I had entirely stripped of power, walked through the doors with red-rimmed eyes, leading a sniffling, weeping, incredibly fragile little girl wearing washed-out, faded jeans. Wait, what do you mean the system bound to the wrong person? You're telling me I'm not the fake young master. What do you mean this is actually a true and fake daughter plotline, you stupid piece of trash system? Yeah, the absolute dog water system rage quit and ghosted me. My name is Caspian Vance. I just turned 18 this year, standing tall in front of the massive floor-to-ceiling windows on the second floor of the ancient Vance family manor. I pinched a fancy champagne flute between my fingers filled entirely with fizzy cola, obviously and condescendingly glared down at the insanely lavish birthday banquet sprawling across the estate's lawn. Down below, glamorous dresses and tailored suits mingled in the shadows, glasses clinking non-stop. The absolute top-tier elites, shady politicians, and ruthless business tycoons of Oakhaven City had all flocked here to kiss up and celebrate the epic coming-of-age and college acceptance banquet of the Vance family's third young master. The looks in their greedy little eyes when they gazed up at me were dripping with absolute awe, sickening flattery, and desperate envy. After all, I am the one and only male heir of this entire generation in the Vance bloodline, the ironclad, totally unquestionable future boss of the Vance Corporation as far as the clueless public is concerned. But honestly, my heart was completely dead and totally unbothered. I actually kind of wanted to burst out laughing because I was the only one who knew all this flashy prosperity was nothing but a fragile illusion, just waiting for tonight's guests to scatter. The second the clock struck midnight, these 18 long years of so-called peaceful life were destined to pop and violently shatter like a cheap soap bubble. And all of this suffocating dread was entirely thanks to that cursed true and fake young master counterattack system deeply hardwired into my brain since birth. 18 years ago, I transmigrated into this brutal world as a defenseless fetus. Before I could even let out a single cry, the system's icy, robotic voice echoed in my tiny mind, officially pronouncing my death sentence. Host identity confirmed, the fake young master of the Vance family. The broken system then immediately forced the original plot into my head, vividly showing me my gruesome ultimate ending. At the age of 18, the true young master would be dragged back home after suffering absolute hell and extreme hardships at the very bottom of society. He would develop a disgustingly toxic, burning resentment toward the host who supposedly hogged all his rightful wealth and glory. The second that true young master returned, he'd launch an unhinged string of vengeful attacks, planting completely fake evidence, ruthlessly framing me, playing the pathetic victim, acting totally innocent while viciously stabbing me in the back, and sowing chaotic discord among every single family member. In the end, the host would be utterly abandoned by the Vance family, violently kicked to the curb, and on a freezing rainy night, absolutely demolished by a hitman's car hired by the true young master. So yeah, from the very day I started chugging baby formula, I knew my life had officially entered a terrifying 18-year countdown. No one on earth can peacefully enjoy being a filthy rich kid after knowing they are 100% destined to become bloody roadkill. But guess what? I absolutely refused to believe in fate. I only believed in the raw power and cold, hard cash firmly gripped in my own two hands. Since the system declared me a fake young master fated to be pathetic cannon fodder, then long before that true young master ever came crawling back, I was going to turn this entire family into my own personal, impenetrable fortress. So, I kicked off a master plan that spanned 18 grueling years. While other pathetic toddlers were stumbling around just learning to walk, I was intensely analyzing the Vance family's massive industrial structure in secret. When all the normal kids were picking their noses in elementary school, I weaponized the memories of my past life, quietly commanding trusted aides to register shadowy offshore companies overseas, flawlessly surfing every single massive wave of the internet and new energy booms, single-handedly completing my massive primal capital accumulation. You might be wondering, at such a young age, and with the odds completely stacked against me, how did I manage to pull all this off? Well, the answer is incredibly simple. I had a system. I mean, honestly, if a transmigrator doesn't milk their system for all it's worth, aren't they just completely wasting their second chance at life? As I grew up, I showed an absolutely terrifying talent for business. At 12 years old, I laid out a massive, game-changing overhaul for the Vance family's retail empire. I introduced an e-commerce model, something that didn't even exist in this world yet, and watched our profits absolutely skyrocket. By the time I was 15, I personally drove the Vance Corporation to buy out a dying game studio that was practically on life support. Fast forward to today, and that exact same company is valued in the hundreds of billions. Everyone in the Vance family, from the lowest employees all the way up to my so-called biological father, Archibald Vance, looked at me like I was a god. They completely bought into the illusion. They thought I was working myself to the bone just to secure my spot as the heir and fight for the family's glory. But only I knew the bitter truth. I was just frantically building my defenses. I knew perfectly well that in this vicious high society circle, bloodline is the only thing that matters. It didn't matter that they had raised me for 18 years. The absolute second Archibald found out I wasn't his real flesh and blood, there was zero chance he'd ever let an outsider inherit his beloved empire. So, I couldn't be the one standing in the spotlight with a massive target on my back. Instead, I shifted my focus to my eldest sister, Serafina Vance. She's 8 years older than me. She's gentle, deeply intellectual, and pretty much your textbook classical beauty. But far more importantly, she was hopelessly and incurably obsessed with doting on her little brother. Seriously, from the time we were kids, if I even slightly furrowed my brow, she would try to pluck the moon right out of the sky for me. It completely broke her heart that I had to grow up so fast. It destroyed her to watch me break my back stressing over the corporation. She constantly blamed herself, crying about being a useless older sister who let my childhood get robbed from me. 9 years ago, I started quietly pulling the strings in the dark. Step by calculated step, I pushed my eldest sister right onto the throne of the Vance Corporation as its CEO. I looked at her, my eyes welling with absolute sincerity. Sis, I really hate being in the spotlight. I just want to be a quiet, background investor. The family desperately needs a steady captain to steer this ship. You are the perfect person for the job. I promise, I will always stand right behind you. She was so deeply moved that she broke down in tears, willingly stepping up to the front lines. She fiercely took control of everything, charging into the battlefield like an absolute warrior, all for my sake. In everyone else's eyes, she was this unstoppable, fiercely decisive, iron-fisted female CEO. But the brutal reality? Every single piece of core data she masters, every major project she signs off on. My shadow is always lurking right behind it. Using my sister as a shield, I played the long game. Just like boiling a frog in warm water, I slowly, methodically hollowed out Archibald's actual power within the company. Look at the Vance Corporation today. Over half of the board of directors answer directly to me. The heads of every core department? They're all fiercely loyal aides I secretly trained myself. Every single penny of capital flow is strictly monitored under my relentless surveillance. Sure, Archibald might still be sitting pretty in the chairman's seat, but the resources he can actually mobilize are pitiful, less than what one of my sister's bottom-tier secretaries can handle. And of course, the old man was more than happy to kick back and enjoy his early retirement. Back then, he had absolutely no clue that I was just a fake young master, nor did he have the slightest idea that I was brilliantly and ruthlessly usurping his entire throne. But wait, it doesn't stop there. I made completely tailored, highly specific arrangements for the other sisters in the house, too. Take my second sister, Isolde Vance. She's 3 years older than me. She's the total ice queen type. Barely speaks a word, and rocks this cold, unapproachable glare 24/7. Now, according to the original plot my system handed me, this exact personality type is ridiculously easy for a two-faced, innocent-acting true young master to manipulate. Honestly, I had zero clue how a girl who acts like a walking block of ice could be useful to anyone. But hey, the system said it, so it's practically gospel. A hyper-advanced, interdimensional tool like that couldn't possibly make a mistake, right? So, I use my limitless resources to quietly fund her ultimate dream of becoming an artist. I shipped her far, far away from the brutal center of corporate warfare, completely nuking the chances of her ever crossing paths with the real young master. Then there's the fourth sister, Pippa Vance. She turns 15 this year, super quiet, extremely well-behaved. She's a lot like our eldest sister, honestly just a little girl who absolutely lives for spilling the tea and watching juicy drama unfold. Way too young to ever be a threat. As long as I keep her happily loaded with ridiculous amounts of pocket money, she's completely harmless. Well, today, I officially turned 18. The entire Vance family, from the highest tier of corporate decision-making all the way down to the old manor security cameras, is entirely under my absolute, ironclad control. I've maxed out every single defense tower, and I'm sitting here clutching a perfect royal flush, the very second that true young master dares to show his face again. The moment he even thinks about sparking a tiny little flame of revenge. I am going to slam him with a brutal dose of reality. I'll show him exactly what it means to lose everything, and what it really feels like to be completely wiped from existence. I've spent hours obsessively imagining the endless ways this so-called true young master might try to make his triumphant return. Maybe he'll come back as a cowering, pathetic poor boy, or an angry, bitter outcast screaming at the world, or hell, maybe even a two-faced, Oscar-worthy manipulator. It literally doesn't matter. No matter who walks through that door, I am 100% ready to destroy him. Why are you hiding up here all alone? Serafina's gentle voice suddenly broke through my intense train of thought. She glided over in a stunning, moon-white evening gown, carrying 2 glasses of fresh juice. I could see a faint trace of exhaustion between her brows, but her eyes held nothing but pure, doting affection when she looked at me. Are you tired? Those old geezers are way too clingy. Don't worry, I blocked them all for you. And hey, drink less carbonated soda, okay? It's bad for your health. I took the juice, flashing her my absolute perfect, harmless smile. Thanks, sis. I'm fine, really. I just wanted a little quiet time. Serafina let out a soft sigh, reaching over to gently straighten my tie. You've always carried the weight of the world on your shoulders, ever since you were little. Today is your 18th birthday. You're officially an adult now. Just promise your big sister you won't push yourself so desperately anymore. If anything happens, remember, your big sister will always be there to tank the hits for you. Looking into her completely sincere eyes, my heart actually gave a little twinge of guilt. Man, I'm so sorry I made you hold the front line just to use you as my personal meat shield, I thought to myself. If you found out one day that I'm not even your biological brother, would you still treat me this well? I shoved that tiny bit of guilt deep down, smiling as I nodded at her. Okay, I'll listen to you, sis. The grand birthday banquet dragged on late into the night. When the very last guest's luxury sedan finally drove away from the estate, the Vance family manor, which had been bustling all day, fell completely silent. Archibald took the main seat in the living room. His face was flushed red, and he was clearly riding high in an incredibly great mood today. My eldest, second, and fourth sisters sat on either side of him. I took my seat too, picking up the hot tea my eldest sister had just brewed for me, blowing on it gently. I knew the main event was finally about to start. According to the original plot I knew so well, in exactly 5 minutes, Archibald was supposed to walk in with a travel-worn young man, dropping a massive bombshell that would completely shock the entire family. I put my teacup down. Under the guise of casually adjusting my cuffs, I secretly pressed the button on a micro remote control hidden deep in my pocket. Instantly, the elite shadow guard stationed outside the old manor entered level 1 combat readiness. The moment I gave the order, even if it was Archibald's biological son walking through those doors, he would be instantly pinned to the floor. Archibald suddenly cleared his throat. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by a heavy, intensely solemn expression. "Since everyone is here, I have a very important matter to announce," he said. "He's here." My body leaned forward slightly, every muscle tensing as my razor-sharp gaze locked onto the entryway. "All right, true young master, let's see exactly what kind of absolute monster you really are." Slow, hesitant footsteps echoed from the entryway. Archibald stood up and rushed over, grabbing someone's hand and gently leading them right into the center of the living room. "This child is named." Archibald's voice choked up with raw emotion. He looked at the person next to him, his eyes completely rimmed with red. "Aura, quick, say hello to everyone." "Wait, say hello to who?" For 18 long years, I had obsessively simulated exactly how I would shock the true young master with my absolute, tyrannical king's aura. I even had my badass villain script memorized word for word. But the second I actually got a clear look at the person Archibald brought back, every single logical circuit in my brain caught fire and instantly fried. My entire body just froze dead stiff on the sofa. Aura was wearing a washed-out white button-down, faded blue jeans, and beat-up canvas shoes covered in dried mud spots. Her figure was shockingly frail. She kept her head bowed super low, looking unbelievably awkward and terrified. Her long hair draped over her shoulders, framing a delicate face with pretty features that carried just a hint of wild stubbornness. But when she looked up and saw this room dripping with luxurious decor, and all of us dressed impeccably, a flash of sheer amazement widened her eyes. Almost instantly, that amazement morphed into a deep, crushing sense of inferiority, and an extremely well-hidden, bitter resentment. She looked like everyone in the world owed her money. The bitter resentment? Spot on. The gritty, bottom-tier life vibe? Perfect. The awkward anxiety and inferiority? All absolutely correct. But the massive freaking problem here is, this is a woman. Where the hell is my true young master? Where is my sinister, cunning, car-crashing, murder-plotting rival that I literally needed to usurp my own dad just to defend against? Why is it a freaking girl? My fourth sister, Pippa, tilted her head curiously. Who? Dad, who is this? Eldest sister Serafina frowned, instinctively sensing an unusual crisis, while my second sister, Isolde, kept her usual icy face, looking like all of this had absolutely nothing to do with her. Archibald took a massive, deep breath, looked at all of us, and announced with a dangerously trembling voice, Isolde, Serafina, Caspian, Aura. She is the true child of our Vance family. Isolde. 21 years ago in the hospital. You and her. He paused, spitting out the last few words with agonized difficulty, were switched at birth. Boom. It felt like a 10,000-foot bolt of heavenly lightning just struck directly onto the crown of my head, frying me to an absolute crisp on the outside and tender on the inside. Wait, the one switched was Isolde? That cold woman of few words who literally never fights, never argues? She is the imposter cuckoo occupying the magpie's nest. And this Aura, the classic White Lotus true daughter, is the genuine, 100% authentic second miss of the Vance family. Then who the hell am I? Bro, I've literally been scheming since I was drinking breast milk for absolutely nothing. I woke up early, stayed up late, sweated blood, and used every dirty trick in the book. I even turned my own dad into a total puppet. I forced my eldest sister to become a ruthless CEO. I plotted for 18 grueling years, all to prepare for a life or death showdown. And the result? My ultimate enemy never existed in the first place. That true young master from the original plot? Completely fake news from start to finish. System, you son of a bitch. I roared like a madman in my mind. System, get the hell out here right now. What the hell is actually going on? Just as my sanity completely shattered, making me want to puke up 3 liters of blood on the spot, that lazy system in my head that usually played dead finally woke up. The system sounded totally dumbfounded, too, its robotic voice carrying a heavy trace of panic. Holy crap, this isn't right. Host, you were supposed to be the fake young master. What happened? My absolute fury flared up. You're asking me what happened? I'm asking you. The system replied in a totally innocent tone, I don't know either. I'm a male protagonist system. I was fully prepared to take you on an epic journey to cultivate immortality. Wait, Cultivate immortality? Hold on a damn second. Systems are divided that specifically? They even have male and female demographics? The system suddenly began a frantic self-check. The sizzling sound of electrical current buzzed back and forth in my mind. System self-checking. Re-verifying original plot due to cross-dimensional interference when the system bound the host 18 years ago. A critical logical error occurred in the underlying code. Identity re-verification. Caspian Vance. DNA matching rate, 99.99%, confirmed without error. You are the biological flesh and blood of Archibald Vance and his late wife. The 100% genuine young master of the Vance family. Original plot target. The true young master who generates deep resentment and plots revenge due to being switched at birth absolutely does not exist. The original antagonist, due to a massive gender discrepancy caused by system error, is now corrected to the true daughter. Alara is the counterpart of the fake second miss, Isolde, not the host's counterpart. This system is strictly dedicated to the true and fake young master counterattack storyline. Given that the host himself is actually the true young master and has already achieved the ultimate goal of mastering the family's absolute power, this system no longer has any reason to exist. System is now unbinding, wishing the host a happy and prosperous life. Goodbye. No. Goodbye forever. The electric buzzing sound in my mind completely vanished. That garbage system that scammed me for 18 whole years, just like how it arrived, waved its sleeves, taking not a single cloud with it, and bolted. It ran away at the speed of light, leaving me completely alone, sitting on the luxurious living room sofa. I just stared at Archibald and Alara, who were crying together in a massive heap. I stared at my eldest sister's utterly shocked face, and I stared at Isolde's chillingly icy expression. I, Caspian Vance, the absolute true young master of the Vance family. The actual, undisputed puppet master of the Vance Corporation. I literally fought a grueling battle of wits and courage with thin air for 18 years. I even usurped my own biological father. What in the flying hell kind of situation is this? Ever since that absolute idiot of a system packed its bags and bolted the other day, I've had brutal insomnia for 3 nights straight. As soon as I close my eyes, I can see my overthrown dad smiling right at me. I can see my sister, whom I forced to become a ruthless businesswoman, eating the empty corporate promises I drew in the sky for her. And I can still clearly hear the system's perfectly enunciated, robotic phrase, "I'm a male protagonist system." My mental state had totally and completely crumbled into dust. To figure out exactly what kind of hellish starting zone I was actually living in, I mobilized the top-tier intelligence network I had originally set up to guard against the true young master and corporate spies, all just to investigate a 21-year-old girl. In less than half a day, Alara's entire life file, from childhood all the way to adulthood, even down to what exact score she got in 3rd grade math, and which illegal sweatshops she worked shady odd jobs in, was placed squarely on my office desk. Staring at that thick stack of investigation documents, I fell deep into thought. Although the system was borderline brain-dead, the main outline of the plot hadn't completely fallen apart. Alara's tragic growth trajectory was exactly molded from the exact same template as the true young master, who suffered at rock bottom and developed an extreme hatred toward wealth, just like the system originally babbled about. Except, the gender was completely wrong. Everything else matched up absolutely perfectly. Alara's adoptive parents, who were actually the fake second sister Isolde's biological parents, were a pair of incredibly toxic, patriarchal, boy-favoring garbage humans. Alara grew up never having nearly enough to eat or even warm clothes to wear in the winter. Not only did she have to do every single household chore, but she was also forced to drop out of school to work and financially provide for her deadbeat younger brother. The absolute slightest bit of resistance would be met with brutal physical beatings and endless curses. She had been struggling for 21 years in an environment as dark and suffocating as a toxic mud pit. Then suddenly, one day, someone walks up and tells her, "You are actually the biological daughter of the richest man in the city. You were always supposed to live in a mega mansion, drive flashy luxury cars, and grow up spoiled rotten with 1,000 different kinds of pampering. But every ounce of suffering you're choking down right now? It originally belonged to another woman. Honestly, if it were me, I'd be boiling with absolute rage too. If this were a web novel, it would be the absolute rock-solid opening for a dark, badass female-led revenge fantasy. Luckily, while the Vance family might be ruthless capitalists, we aren't exactly cold-blooded monsters. The old man, Archibald had dragged himself through the mud of the corporate world for decades, so he handled this mess with absolute precision. He dropped a massive pile of cash, forced a severance agreement down those blood-sucking adoptive parents' throats, and brought Ara straight back home to the Vance family. He even legally restored her surname to Vance, meaning she should rightfully go by Ara Vance from now on. But the name Ara Thorne had stuck with her for way too long. She was completely used to it and flat out refused to change it. I was secretly roasting her in my head. What an absolute psycho. Who actually gets attached to a surname? Would you get used to being called Megatron, too? As for the fake second sister, Isolde, both Dad and my eldest sister made their stance crystal clear. After all, she's been raised under this roof for over 20 years. That emotional bond doesn't just vanish. Even without blood ties, the Vance family controls a massive business empire. Feeding one extra mouth means absolutely nothing to us. She firmly remains the second miss of the Vance family. Isolde's reaction to all this was even more legendary. The exact day she found out she was the fake daughter, she just coldly replied with a deadpan, "Oh." Then she indifferently added, "If you need me to move out, please just give me a 3-day notice so I can pack up my painting supplies." And with that, she marched right back into her art studio to keep painting. It was as if the rest of us were the only ones experiencing a massive, life-shattering earthquake. She only gave a damn about whether her paint was drying properly. Her icy personality and her expressive hobbies had a seriously jarring contrast. I always felt that a passionate hobby like painting shouldn't belong to someone as ice-cold as her. But whatever. Since our family's backyard is officially secure now, I finally figured one glorious thing out. I am legally and biologically blood-related. I don't need to fend off anyone trying to snatch my inheritance, because this massive fortune is legally mine to begin with. I don't need to grind 24/7 anymore. I'm done studying overseas mergers and stalking the NASDAQ index. I am going to lie flat and peacefully rot. I'm swapping the fake cola in my champagne flute for a real fizzy ice-cold soda. I am finally going to just play video games. So, I immediately dialed my eldest sister Serafina's number. "Sis, I've thought about this very carefully. I just turned 18. Life should be filled with far more possibilities." I laid back on my bed, keeping my tone deep and profoundly serious. All the proposal meetings for this half year, and that South City new energy bidding war about to launch. I am handing full authority over to you to manage. I just want to rest. On the other end of the line, my eldest sister went dead silent for a full 30 seconds. While I knew she absolutely wouldn't scold me for slacking off, I figured she just assumed I was finally taking her advice to catch my breath. However, my eldest sister's reaction was nothing like what I actually expected. Her voice dropped to a hushed whisper, completely oozing with the frantic excitement of a mastermind mapping out some grand, ruthless strategy. "Did you notice something? Are those old geezers trying to mess with the South City project by taking advantage of our family drama? You're retreating to advance, aren't you? You want to draw the snakes right out of their holes and hit them with a massive purge, right?" I was left completely speechless. No, sis. With that dangerously overactive imagination, it's a sheer waste of talent that you aren't writing suspense thrillers. A fake daughter drama isn't a fake young master crisis. As long as I, the heir holding the actual power, am totally fine, the family could turn into a boiling pot of chaos and it still wouldn't dent the corporation. Sis, I really just want to play video games. Understood. The greatest mastermind hides in plain sight, feigning illness to show weakness. Don't you worry. Just leave everything to your big sister. For these next few months, you maintain your deep cover, while your big sister blocks the raging storm outside for you. Click. She hung up the phone. I stared at my phone screen exhaustedly, pinching the bridge of my nose. This isn't right. My eldest sister's personality was never this hyper and paranoid. Where the hell did my gentle, intellectual sister go? This extreme personality shift is way too bizarre. But whatever, let it all burn. Fortunately, my eldest sister had been thoroughly trained by me at this point. Her business methods were extremely ruthless. She was more than capable of standing on her own 2 feet. As for whatever wild conspiracies she was hallucinating in her head, I'd just let her be. I genuinely thought I could finally start the glorious, useless rich kid retirement life I had put on hold for 18 years. But very quickly, I realized how dead wrong I was. The tree craves stillness, but the howling wind refuses to stop. Ara's revenge had officially begun. Although, thanks to the system's colossal screw-up, her main target for revenge had entirely shifted from me over to Isolde. But as a bystander just trying to eat popcorn under the same roof, I was still forcefully dragged into this low-tier, toxic mansion warfare. It happened on the 5th day after Ara returned. It was dinner time, and the whole family was sitting around our long French dining table. Oh, right, eldest sister wasn't there. She was stuck being a top-tier corporate workhorse in my place at the company. Originally, our family chefs had already whipped up a lavish dinner, but Alara insisted on cooking personally, claiming she wanted to make everyone her signature pork rib soup to thank our parents for the gift of life. But the second she walked out carrying that massive bowl of steaming hot soup, I immediately sensed something was wrong. Today, she was wearing a noticeably oversized, ratty old t-shirt. The cuffs were washed out so badly, the threads were unraveling. Even though Dad and eldest sister had already stuffed her closet to the brim with seasonal haute couture, she stubbornly chose to dress like this. She looked exactly like a tragic little stray who had just escaped a refugee camp. Alara carried the soup, and right as she walked near Isolde, her foot suddenly, and very accidentally, tripped. Ah! She cried out in alarm. That bowl of scalding hot broth tilted directly toward Isolde. Isolde reacted fast, jerking backward violently to dodge the direct splash, but the grease still splattered all over the hem of her expensive silk dress. Crash! The huge porcelain bowl shattered into a million pieces on the floor. The very next second, before Isolde could even utter a word, Alara dropped to her knees with a heavy thud right into the broken shards and spilled soup. I'm so sorry, sister. I didn't mean to. Alara's eyes instantly turned red. Massive tears rolled down her cheeks, one after another. She completely ignored the jagged porcelain shards on the floor, reaching out with her bare hands to wipe the soup off Isolde's dress. The back of her hand was immediately scalded bright red. I know I'm clumsy. I can't do anything right. I made you angry. Sister, please don't be mad at me. You can hit me or scold me however you want. Just, please don't chase me away. Alara cried beautifully, like a fragile flower battered by the rain, her frail shoulders trembling pitifully. That agonizing look of swallowing her grievances for the sake of peace made it seem like Isolde had just subjected her to medieval torture. The air at the dining table instantly froze. Fourth sister Pippa was so spooked she dropped her chopsticks with a clatter. Dad Archibald stood up abruptly, his face full of absolute heartache. Meanwhile, I just sat there next to the main seat, still holding a braised prawn in my hand, coldly watching Alara's flawlessly executed, two-faced manipulator combo. I almost couldn't hold back from clapping. Good heavens! Playing hard to get, striking preemptively, acting weak to farm sympathy, and casually slapping a giant label on Isolde, painting her as the vicious fake daughter who just can't tolerate the true bloodline. This isn't just a biological daughter. This girl is a literal masterclass in toxic manipulation who somehow gained sentience. Alara, what are you doing? Dad's defenses were indeed the first to break. He was soft-hearted at his core, especially toward this biological daughter who had supposedly been wandering outside, suffering for 21 years. Wearing the thick, rose-tinted glasses of parental guilt, he shoved his chair away and rushed over, pulling up Alara from the floor. Your hands are all red from the burn, and you're bleeding. Dad was trembling with heartache. He turned to look at Isolde, who was still standing there with an icy expression, and frowned heavily. Isolde. Alara just got back. She isn't used to life in this house yet. Dad didn't finish the sentence, but his underlying meaning was crystal clear. You should accommodate her. Stop giving her attitude. I lowered my head and sighed. Is there some sort of mind-numbing, IQ-dropping aura surrounding this girl? Dad's mental gymnastics were so wild, I honestly couldn't bear to watch. Isolde looked down at her ruined, high-end silk dress, then glanced at Alara, who was sobbing so hard she could barely catch her breath. Her already cold face turned even frostier. She opened her mouth, looking like she wanted to explain. But with her notoriously stubborn, tight-lipped personality, she held it in for ages before bluntly stating, I didn't touch her. I know sister didn't touch me. It was me. I just couldn't stand steady. Alara sobbed, gripping tightly onto Dad's sleeve. She cried so hard her entire body shook. Dad, please don't blame sister. I'm just too stupid. I can't even hold a bowl of soup properly. I used to be like this at my old house too. I often made my adoptive parents angry and got beaten for it. I'm used to it. Holy crap, that sentence was literal psychological assassination. She didn't just cement her status as the helpless, bullied victim, but she also managed to trample all over Isolde, and deliberately reignited our biological father's fierce rage toward her abusive adoptive parents. She successfully escalated an accidental soup spill into full-blown class warfare and emotional manipulation. Fourth sister Pippa was already shrinking into her chair like a frightened little quail, not even daring to breathe. As for me, I took my sweet time peeling the very last braised prawn in my hand, dipped it in some vinegar, elegantly popped it into my mouth, chewed, and swallowed. Then, I picked up the wet wipe next to me, wiping my fingers clean, one by one. Honestly, the skill level of this little family drama was way too low. The intelligence level in this room was so low that a tactical grandmaster like me, who had spent years outsmarting the most ruthless old foxes in corporate boardrooms, who played high-stakes games of mergers, acquisitions, and short selling, setting ruthless strategic traps for 18 straight years, actually felt a profound, aching sense of loneliness. Cue the sad violin music for my tragically massive intellect. I let out a heavy sigh, tossed my wet wipe onto the table, and finally shattered the deadlocked silence. Butler Barnaby. My voice wasn't loud at all, but it carried the unquestionable, crushing authority of a man used to ruling a corporate empire. Present, third young master, Barnaby, who had been visibly shrinking into the corner, immediately stepped forward with a trembling, slight bow. Call someone to clean this mess up. Do I really need to open my mouth for every little thing? Right away, third young master. The butler nodded frantically and hurriedly waved the maids over to clean up the absolute disaster Ara had just dropped on the floor. Honestly, I didn't know if some kind of mysterious IQ-dropping aura was infecting this house, but I literally had to micromanage every minor inconvenience. Then, I locked eyes with her and spoke at a chillingly slow pace. First of all, this pure handmade wool carpet in our dining area was air-freighted directly from Italy just last month. There are absolutely no raised seams or wrinkles on it whatsoever. Therefore, the probability of you tripping on perfectly flat ground defies the basic laws of physics, unless, of course, there is a severe physiological defect with your legs. I leaned back in my designer chair, my cold gaze sweeping flatly over Ara. Instantly, her pathetic sobbing choked off in her throat. She stared at me in stunned, wide-eyed astonishment. I completely ignored her reaction and continued my ruthless analysis. Second, based on the trajectory of the parabola from your little slip just now, if you had accidentally tripped forward, that bowl of soup should have splashed directly onto your own chest, or the empty floor right in front of you. Instead, the scalding broth managed to splash from an incredibly tricky angle, forming a 60-degree fan shape right onto the hem of Isolda's dress, a full half-meter to your left. This mathematically proves that at the exact moment of your fall, your wrist deliberately executed a highly difficult lateral force-exerting maneuver. Dad sat there completely stunned, asking in utter confusion, "Caspian, what? What exactly do you mean by that?" Yep, definitely an IQ-dropping aura in this room. My meaning, father, is that unless she used to be a professional acrobat, that spill was 100% intentional. I stood up and slowly walked over to them. Even though I was only 18 years old, my year-round aura of being the absolute boss meant that even standing casually, I radiated an intensely terrifying, oppressive presence. Ara's face instantly drained of all color, turning a ghostly pale. She bit down hard on her lower lip, fresh tears swirling desperately in her eyes. Third brother, why? Why would you say such awful things about me? I raised a single hand, immediately shutting down her pathetic spellcasting wind-up. Stop right there. Third, the Vance family has strict rules. This estate employs over a dozen top-tier chefs, all with professional certifications and advanced nutritionist licenses. We do not need the masters of this house cooking their own meals. You dressing up like a maid to go into the kitchen does nothing but add unnecessary psychological pressure to our staff. It is completely meaningless. I looked down, my eyes locking onto her supposedly scalded, red hands. My tone remained perfectly calm, as if we were casually discussing today's weather forecast. Listen, you suffered at the bottom of society for 21 years. Dad's heart genuinely aches for you, and the Vance family will absolutely compensate you. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But the proper way to compensate you is to have you go study, travel the world, and finally enjoy the luxurious life you actually deserve. The solution is not for you to come crawling back to this mansion, just to keep playing those pathetic, attention-seeking mind games. I have zero tolerance for the acting, weak, cheap mansion drama tricks you picked up in the slums. Let's be completely fair here. By bloodline alone, you truly are my second sister in this house. As long as you stay in your damn lane, you will remain the respected second miss of the Vance family. Not a single soul here will ever mistreat you. But if you insist on stepping on other people just to climb higher—" I looked deep into Era's instantly shrinking, terrified eyes and offered a chillingly slight smile. "I am a man who absolutely despises unnecessary trouble. When it's necessary to solve things once and for all, I highly prefer to completely eliminate the problem at its very source." Dead, suffocating silence instantly filled the grand dining room. The look in fourth sister Pippa's eyes had rapidly shifted from utter shock to pure, unadulterated worship. Our adopted, fake second sister Isolde still didn't dare utter a single word, but her tightly furrowed brows had obviously relaxed in pure relief. Dad Archibald just kept his mouth hanging wide open, clearly wanting to step up and defend his newly found biological daughter. But then he quickly remembered just how tyrannical and absolute my word was both inside this house and within the entire corporate empire. So, he smartly didn't utter a single peep. As for Ara, she bit her lip so desperately it almost bled. Genuine, fearful tears were finally streaming down her face this time. This wasn't some pathetic act to fish for pity anymore. This was pure, unadulterated terror. She probably never dreamed in a million years that the petty, manipulative little tricks she was so incredibly proud of didn't even amount to a loud fart in front of me. I just turned around, nonchalantly stuffed my hands deep into my pockets, and lazily strolled toward the grand staircase. "Oh, by the way, tell the head chef to grill up a lamb rib and bring it directly to my room. I spent way too much energy watching that absolute circus of a drama earlier. I didn't get to eat nearly enough." According to the tired old tropes of those cliché wealthy family novels, the sons are strictly used to inherit the family business and aggressively expand corporate territories. Meanwhile, the daughters are treated like pawns, used purely for commercial marriages just to solidify family interests. The Vance family definitely used to operate under that exact same rotten custom, too. But the absolute second I ruthlessly seized full control of this empire, the very first thing I did was rip all those messy, outdated arranged marriage plans right out of old man Vance's stubborn brain. Are you freaking kidding me? I busted my ass grinding for 18 years, elevating the Vance Corporation into a dimension so high that all the old money families in Oak Haven City combined couldn't even touch us. And people thought we still needed to sell off my sisters for resources? Please. Now, it's everyone else begging the Vance family for a scrap to eat. Arranged marriages? The Vance family absolutely does not need them. Because of me, my eldest sister never has to entertain those creepy, greasy old men. She gets to rule as our iron-fisted female CEO in absolute peace. My 15-year-old fourth sister doesn't have to worry about being forced into some twisted childhood betrothal. And then there is my fake second sister, Isolde. She actually had a pre-arranged match, the eldest young master of the Sterling family, the infamous Thaddeus Sterling. The second I took power, I dropped one simple line. What kind of absolute trash is the Sterling family to think they can climb the social ladder using us? I unilaterally shredded that engagement contract, and honestly, the fallout was hilarious. Thaddeus, who was originally dead set against a business marriage himself, took one look at Isolde's absolute ice queen beauty, realized he couldn't have her, and instantly awakened some bizarre, twisted fetish. He morphed into Isolde's biggest, creepiest stalker, obsessively pestering her for years. Fast forward to September. Oak Haven University was kicking off the back-to-school season. As the top academic institution in the country, the school was very familiar with the Vance Corporation's tens of millions in annual education donations. And me? The 18-year-old true young master of the Vance family had finally stepped onto a college campus, exactly as planned. I thought I was about to kick off my glorious, well-earned retirement slacking off, rotting in bed, sleeping through lectures, and gaming all night. But I totally forgot Alara was here, too. Dad had bought her a spot at Oak Haven, making her a freshman right alongside me. And by sheer coincidence, Isolde was a senior in the Fine Arts Academy. Ever since that day in the old manor dining room when I humbled Alara with a physical smackdown and a brutal reality check, she had been playing the role of an invisible ghost at home, literally taking the long way around just to avoid my shadow. I genuinely thought she had a sudden epiphany and decided to turn over a new leaf as a low-key rich kid. But clearly, I underestimated the toxic obsession of a manipulative White Lotus. She probably realized I was the final boss she absolutely could not mess with. So, She wisely changed her battlefield, moving her entire drama, causing operation to the campus, aiming all her firepower at the prime culprit who stole 21 years of her life. Isolde. I will give her this, Alara was undeniably gorgeous. Her frail figure, supposedly caused by years of malnutrition, paired perfectly with that delicate, pure, blow-over-in-the-wind first-love face. To those naive college boys hyped up on protective instincts, it was practically a nuclear-level threat. Less than a week into the semester, Alara already had a massive swarm of desperate upperclassmen and eager peers completely at her beck and call, letting her silently deploy her ultimate two-faced green tea skills among the crowd. That afternoon, in a high-end cafe in the South District of Oak Haven, I was chilling in a corner booth with my headphones on, holding my phone sideways, sweating my absolute heart out, executing combos in a ranked match. Third young master, what would you like to drink? We just got the geisha beans in today. The cafe owner, a minor rich kid I casually threw some investment money at once, eagerly trotted over to kiss up. Iced cola, I muttered. I didn't even look up, my thumbs flying across the glass screen. But right at that moment, the wind chimes at the entrance jingled. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught two people walking in. One was a guy rocking limited edition sneakers with immaculately styled hair. It was none other than Isolde's former arranged fiancé, her current #1 stalker, Thaddeus Sterling. And the girl trailing right behind him, head bowed, eyes puffy and red, tightly clutching a cheap milk tea in both hands. That was none other than my biological second sister, Alara. This matchmaking algorithm is freaking toxic. I cursed the game internally, casually slapping my phone face down on the table and yanking out one earbud. Why? Because I smelled it, the pungent, unmistakable stench of a premium Longjing green tea leaf that had somehow gained sentience. Senior Thaddeus, thank you for treating me to drinks, Alara said, her voice as thin as silk, dripping with 3 parts grievance and 7 parts brave resilience. Actually, you really didn't need to bother with me. I'm used to it. Back in the countryside, I heard things far uglier than this. Thaddeus frowned, his face twisted in righteous, blind indignation. You are just too kind, Alara. You are the actual, true daughter of the Vance family. Isolde occupied your nest like a parasite for 21 years, and she is still hoarding resources that rightfully belong to you right now, strutting around school with that high and mighty attitude of hers. Who the hell is she showing it off to? Hearing that, I did a slow, tactical lean back in my dark corner. Wow, I take my eyes off her for just a few days, and she pulls this? How on earth did Heir manage to hook up with Thaddeus? Just listening to their conversation, you could tell she had already painted herself as a peerless, tragic little cinnamon roll, ruthlessly suppressed by the fake daughter. Senior Thaddeus, please don't say that about my sister. Heir quickly waved her hands, tears perfectly swirling in her eyes, right on the verge of falling but never actually dropping. My sister. She's very innocent too. It's my own fault. I didn't learn piano growing up. I didn't learn how to paint. I just don't know anything. No wonder her friends all look down on me, calling me a country bumpkin. She sniffled, forcing a brave, fragile smile as she looked up at Thaddeus. Honestly, I'm quite envious of her. If we hadn't been switched at birth, would I also have been able to know someone as amazing as you since childhood? Absolute perfection. This classic maneuver of retreating to advance, combined with subtly shooting him flirty looks, was literally textbook White Lotus dialogue. It didn't just accuse Isolde of letting her friends isolate her at school. It also conveniently fed Thaddeus some massive emotional validation, fiercely satisfying the rich boy's vanity and protective instincts. Sure enough, Thaddeus's IQ instantly hit rock bottom. As if hit by a hex, he slammed his hand on the table. Outrageous. It's bad enough Isolde acts like a total ice queen normally. I didn't expect her to be this manipulative. Heir, don't worry. Today happens to be the Fine Arts Academy's art exhibition. I am going over there right now to demand an explanation from her. What rightfully belongs to you, I will definitely win back for you. Thaddeus was totally fired up by Heir's toxic rhetoric. He turned around and aggressively started marching toward the Fine Arts building. Ara stood in place, watching Thaddeus march away. The face that was pitiful and vulnerable just a second ago instantly changed. The very moment he turned his back, her tears miraculously vanished. The corners of her mouth curled into an extremely cold, secretive, and triumphant smile. That was the gaze of a viper that had crawled through the mud, finally sinking its fangs into its prey. She adjusted the collar of her washed-out shirt, totally preparing to follow him and watch the good show. But right at this moment, from a quiet corner of the cafe, came the loud, disdainful smack of someone's lips. Immediately following that was the sharp hiss of a soda can popping open. Heir's entire body went rigid, and she turned her head mechanically. I was sitting right there in the shadows of the booth, unhurriedly taking a sip of ice-cold cola, letting out a deeply satisfying sigh. Then I lifted my eyelids, staring at Heir, who looked like she had just seen a ghost exhaustedly pinching the bridge of my nose. Heir, do you honestly think that as long as you avoid my line of sight, everyone in this world will happily play along with your pathetic little stage plays? I slammed the cola on the table, making a loud thud. Do you believe me when I say, before Thaddeus even reaches the Fine Arts building, with just one phone call from me, his old man will personally fly a helicopter over here and break his legs? I looked at the girl in front of me, whose body had started shaking uncontrollably again, and just felt a wave of profound exhaustion. This generation's villains are absolutely trash. I just wanted to quietly go to college and play video games. Why the hell is that so hard? I didn't even stand up from the booth. Right in front of Heir's terrified face, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts to find the number saved as Old Man Sterling, and casually texted him a single question mark. Less than 30 seconds later, Thaddeus, who had just reached the door of the cafe, puffing out his chest, ready to enact justice on behalf of the common folk. Well, the phone in his pocket started vibrating like crazy. Through the glass, I watched him answer the call. Just a second before, he still had the arrogant expression of a chosen hero ready to protect world peace. The very next second, his face turned ghastly pale, his originally straight spine bent into a neat 90-degree angle, although I couldn't hear him, just by looking at the shape of his mouth as he frantically bowed and nodded to the empty air. I could guess exactly what he was saying. Dad, no, I didn't cause trouble. I really didn't provoke young Master Vance. I was wrong. I will roll back home immediately. Hanging up the phone, Thaddeus didn't even dare to look back. Like a scrawny dog whose tail had been stepped on, he scrambled frantically out of the school gates, hailed a cab, and totally fled. I couldn't help but marvel internally. A supposed young master doesn't even have his own car and driver? I put down my phone, picked up the ice-cold cola again, and took a sip, looking at Heir, who was frozen in place, her face whiter than a sheet of paper. See, I told you, I sighed heavily. You insist on playing these childish little house games. Not only does it waste my time, it wastes Old Man Sterling's blood pressure medication. Heir's mental defense was completely shattered. If, back at the old Vance Manor, she still felt I was just using my home court advantage to bully her, well, now she knew the real truth. So today, right here on the campus of Oakhaven University, a place that supposedly had absolutely nothing to do with the core power of the Vance family, I made my move. I literally used a single, well-placed punctuation mark to completely obliterate that manipulative little sob story she had spent the entire afternoon so carefully weaving together. Now that is what you call an overwhelming, next-level reality check. The way she stared at me instantly shifted from bitter jealousy and resentment into the sheer, unadulterated terror of a trapped mouse locking eyes with a hungry cat. Third brother, she stammered, her voice violently trembling. Honestly, I was genuinely puzzled on the inside. Was I really being that terrifying? I just waved my hand dismissively, like shooing away a mildly annoying fly. Just go back to class, I sighed. And stop binge-watching those low IQ, brain-dead royal drama shows in your free time. Go memorize some English vocabulary instead. If you end up failing your level 4 English exam, Dad is going to start nagging me again about not taking proper care of you. Ara didn't even dare to drop a single harsh parting word. With pathetic tears welling up in her eyes, she scrambled away in total defeat. From that day forward, Heir finally started behaving properly. Or, more accurately, she entered a temporary period of absolute dormancy. It seems she finally realized that as long as I, Caspian Vance, was still drawing breath on this earth, all those manipulative two-faced tricks and innocent victim acts she picked up from the very bottom of society were just fragile, pathetic jokes that would instantly shatter at the slightest touch. For the next full 2 months, the bustling campus of Oakhaven University was actually completely, blissfully peaceful. Ara didn't go out of her way to provoke Isolde again, nor did she even try to hook up with any of the flashy, rich second-generation trust fund kids. She actually attended all her classes on time every single day, and after class, she uncharacteristically went straight to the library to check out books. She was acting entirely like a totally reformed model student. Thanks to that, I finally ushered in my absolute dream retirement-style college life. My eldest sister, Serafina, was out there ruthlessly slaughtering the competition at the company, managing the Vance Corporation in totally perfect order for me. Every single day, whenever she reported her work progress to me over WeChat, she was still out there mentally writing a whole 10-season political thriller about whatever grand, complex chess game she thought I was secretly playing. Meanwhile, my fake second sister, Isolde, was painting peacefully over in the Fine Arts Academy. She was occasionally winning some incredibly baffling, totally obscure grand prizes. Of course, this wasn't just them doing me a favor. As for fourth sister Pipa, she was still just a carefree consumer of endless useless drama. As for me, I happily slept until I woke up naturally every single day, occasionally dropping into a few random public lectures that I actually found mildly interesting. I spent the rest of my abundant free time grinding games in the university esports club or racing expensive cars with a few close buddies along the winding mountain roads of Oakhaven City. Honestly, it felt like absolutely everything was finally moving in a wonderfully positive direction. But of course, if I actually believed that peace would last, then I truly would be a massive, gullible idiot. You know the golden rule. If the kids go quiet, they are definitely making a disastrous mess somewhere else. And sure enough, after playing the part of a perfectly well-behaved model student at Oakhaven University for 2 solid months, Ara finally couldn't suppress her toxic, deep-seated urge to cause absolute chaos anymore. After suffering the brutal, tragic lessons of our previous few encounters, she had probably stayed hidden away under her dorm covers, deeply analyzing my tactical system until she finally reached a wild conclusion. She figured out that in the face of absolute capital and overwhelming IQ, going head-to-head with me was pure suicide. So, she aggressively changed her strategy. Since she couldn't climb over the massive, impenetrable mountain that was me, Caspian Vance, then she would just completely bypass me. She planned to launch an asymmetrical strike straight from the moral and ethical high ground, using this bizarre angle to forcefully drive a wedge between me and my fake second sister, Isolde. Her logic? As long as I grew to despise Isolde and finally stopped backing her up, then kicking Isolde out of the prestigious Vance family would just be a matter of minutes. The master plan itself was theoretically flawless, but her actual method of execution genuinely blew the mind of a guy like me who had practically been a calculating corporate overlord since the day I was born. Normally, all the standard outerwear of the wealthy Vance family was meticulously handled by our dedicated servants. There was a massive, dedicated laundry room down on the first floor. However, our intimate apparel was always washed by ourselves, using the private washing machines conveniently located right inside our personal bedroom suite bathrooms. At first, honestly, I just noticed that the expensive underwear I personally washed and hung out to dry on my third-floor private balcony would occasionally, and quite mysteriously, vanish into thin air, one piece at a time. Initially, I just assumed they were getting blown away by the strong wind. After all, the autumn gales blowing through Oakhaven City had been exceptionally blustery and chaotic lately. But recently, things escalated. The speed of my casual washing literally couldn't keep up with the staggering speed of this bizarre underwear theft. I actually even lost a brand new pair of underwear that I hadn't even worn or washed yet. And then, I saw it with my own 2 eyes on the mansion's security footage. Ara was acting exactly like a sneaky little thieving marmot, slipping into my room while the servants completely had their backs turned, and when she finally crept back out, she was tightly clutching that unwashed, super limited edition pair of CK boxer briefs. Sitting there in the security room staring at the monitor at that exact moment, my entire brain went completely, utterly blank. Now, obviously there are no cameras inside our private bedrooms, but with so many active servants working in the Vance family estate, there are most definitely high-definition cameras covering all the hallways. Like, seriously? No. Big sister, what in the absolute hell are you actually trying to achieve here? You're supposed to be a scheming mastermind, not some creepy, perverted stalker. Why on earth are you secretly stealing my damn underwear? Are you planning to cast some crazy dark voodoo curse with it? Like, shouldn't this unhinged behavior be the plotline for a disgraced fake young master? A fierce rivalry between a true and fake daughter involving dirty rumors, and you actually chose to weaponize stolen underwear? That is just so incredibly, bafflingly avant-garde. I honestly had to ruthlessly suppress my burning urge to expose her insane crime right then and there, mostly because I was genuinely, extremely curious. I mean, what kind of sick, twisted magic trick? Was she actually planning to perform with my stolen pair of boxer briefs? I've seen fake heirs steal a sister's underwear to frame someone before, but a manipulative sister stealing a brother's boxers to frame the other sister? Now that was a first. Fast forward to a lazy weekend afternoon. Dad was taking a rare day off at home. Naturally, this was only because I was completely slacking off, doing absolutely zero work. My fourth sister, Pippa, was chilling in the living room watching TV when Ara finally debuted her little script. Dad, I can't find something of mine. I think I left it in my second sister's room. Could you come help me look for it? Ara's eyes were totally red. She looked like she was on the verge of tears, acting utterly terrified at the thought of facing Isolde alone. Dad absolutely hated seeing her make that face. He instantly dropped his newspaper. It's just a small thing, sweetie. Why are you crying? Come on, let's go. Dad will go with you. I was sitting on the sofa, right in the middle of a ranked match. Hearing her performance, I silently turned off my phone screen. Oh, it's go time. Phase 2 of this manipulative little scheme was officially underway. Our grand entourage pushed open the door to Isolde's room. She was wearing her headphones, painting away at her easel. Seeing us march in, she just slightly raised a single eyebrow, slid off her headphones, and didn't say a word. Sister, I'm so sorry to bother you, but that diamond necklace I lent you the day before yesterday. Where did you put it? I have a class reunion tomorrow, and I really want to wear it. Ara's voice carried this perfect hint of deliberate timidity. Isolde just frowned. I never borrowed your necklace. Ara immediately shot back. Sister, you must have forgotten. It's right under your pillow. Ara feigned pure innocence, walking swiftly toward the bed as if eager to prove it. She forcefully grabbed Isolde's pillow and flipped it over. Ah! Ara let out this dramatically exaggerated, ear-piercing scream, jerking back 2 steps and covering her mouth, her face flushed completely red. There, on those pristine white bedsheets, a black pair of men's boxer briefs was lying there quietly and incredibly abruptly. The signature CK letters on the elastic band were practically blinding in the afternoon sunlight. You, even though you aren't Dad's biological daughter, third brother grew up right in front of you. You're practically real siblings. How could you? How could you do such a shameless, disgusting thing? Ara accused her, sounding utterly heartbroken. Her fake tears fell right on cue. No wonder you kept refusing to move out. So you actually had intentions toward third brother. You're terrifying. Ara's voice was trembling slightly, but from pure excitement. She was totally immersed in the twisted joy of finally grasping Isolde's fatal weakness. Her entire being radiated this smug aura of, I've finally drawn first blood, I have successfully counterattacked. She had definitely pre-visualized the exact scenes about to play out in her mind. Dad exploding in blinding fury. Me, feeling violently sick and disgusted. Isolde, completely unable to defend herself, and finally getting kicked straight out of the Vance family gates. However, 10 seconds passed. The room was dead silent. There was no anticipated furious explosion. Nobody cursed her out. Why? Because the reactions of everyone present were bizarre to the extreme. As the #1 victim of this whole framing setup, the fake second sister, Isolde, unexpectedly didn't offer much of a rebuttal. She didn't spit out a cold, dismissive, boring like she usually did, nor did she angrily accuse Ara of planting evidence. She just stood quietly by her easel. First, she cast an incredibly complex, loaded look at the underwear on the bed. Then, she slowly lifted her eyes and looked right at me. My hands were originally shoved deep in my pockets, gripping my high-definition smartphone which held the crystal-clear, unedited video of the little thief in action. I was just about to pull it out and deliver a swift dose of reality, but the moment I met Isolde's eyes, my hand totally froze. Because the instant our lines of sight crossed, Isolde actually looked away, intensely guilty, like she had just been burned. That normally cold, pale cheek and her earlobes actually flushed with a highly suspicious, deep layer of red. My heart violently sank to the floor. Wait, this reaction isn't right. My heart skipped a massive beat. My brain's CPU instantly fried itself. Not right. This is way too wrong. This underwear was clearly stolen by Era. What the hell are you feeling guilty about? What's with that dodging look in your eyes? It looked exactly like your deepest, darkest, hidden desires were just exposed to the world. Could it be? I turned to look at Dad. Although Dad Archibald's eyes were as wide as saucers, he wasn't angry at all. Those old eyes that had weathered the brutal business world were occasionally sweeping over Isolde, and then occasionally sweeping over me. There was zero rage in his eyes, only a touch of absolute shock and a kind of indescribable, deeply complicated feeling. As for my fourth sister, Pippa, both her hands were tightly covering her mouth. Her eyes were perfectly round, and her face was totally full of shock. Obviously, her innocent worldview had been violently assaulted by this perverted little scene. But with her naive little brain, she probably didn't realize the deeper, wilder implications at all. And right at this exact moment, Ara, seeing the atmosphere so heavy and everyone completely dead silent, actually thought her brilliant scheme had finally succeeded. She honestly thought everyone was just so incredibly disgusted by Isolde's perverted behavior that they couldn't even speak. The corners of Ara's mouth were twitching, desperate to break into a totally unhinged smirk. She bit down hard on her lower lip, secretly cheering, just waiting for the final judgment to drop. But honestly, I was in no mood to deal with her petty drama right now. The phone in my pocket felt like a 50-pound weight. My brain was completely hijacked by that guilty, panicked look in my fake second sister's eyes just a second ago. Over the last 18 years, the mints she'd slipped me when my oldest sister forced me to chug gross herbal medicine, the way her shoulders instantly relaxed the day I called off the Sterling family arranged marriage. Our manor is absolutely massive, yet she specifically chose to set up her art studio right next door to my study. Countless little details that I had completely brushed off as deep sibling affection were suddenly flashing through my brain like a blaring, red alert slideshow. Holy crap! Isolde, you look like this perfectly elegant ice queen, but deep down, you've been harboring a massive brother complex this whole time. Seeing the dead silence in the room, my dad, Archibald, was finally the first one to snap back to reality. He cleared his throat loudly and scrambled to smooth things over. Wow, the weather sure is nice today. Haha. There must just be some huge misunderstanding here. It is definitely not proper for us big tough guys to just hang around a young lady's bedroom. Dad laughed awkwardly, grabbing my shoulders and shoving me toward the door while practically herding Ara and Pippa out. Let's go. Move it. Move it. Let's go. Everybody back to your rooms. Don't interrupt Isolde's painting. We will talk about this later. In the most stiff, incredibly awkward way possible, Dad forcefully broke up the crowd. Bang. The door to Isolde's room slammed shut. For the rest of the day, the tension inside the Vance family villa was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Dad locked himself in his study, brewing up God knows what kind of master plan. Isolde's door stayed dead shut. And me? I just laid on the massive bed in my room, staring up at the ceiling, completely questioning my entire existence. Out of the entire Vance household, Ara was the only one happily humming a tune in her room, secretly celebrating her hard-won, Phase 1 victory. Ever since the underwear incident the other day, the old Vance manor actually entered this bizarre period of total peace. Ara's mood over the past few days had been visibly fantastic. She completely stopped causing drama and stopped playing the pathetic victim. She was even wolfing down 2 extra bowls of rice at dinner every single night. She was probably dead certain of one thing. In that bedroom full of sketchy ethical violations, even though Dad forcefully interrupted the whole mess, the seed of doubt had firmly been planted. A fake daughter secretly thirsting after the true young master? That is a massive, unforgivable taboo in a wealthy family. All she had to do now was wait patiently, wait for this time bomb to naturally detonate, and the imperial decree to kick Isolde to the curb would arrive right on schedule. Honestly, watching her flutter around the old manor every day like a happy little sparrow, I genuinely didn't have the heart to tell her that the bomb actually did detonate. It's just that the explosion triggered a massive fireworks show of pink, romantic peach blossoms. Over the past few days, my mood was incredibly complicated, but compared to me questioning my life choices, Comrade Archibald was basically parting the dark clouds to gaze upon a clear, beautiful blue sky. Ever since that old fox finished crunching the numbers in his head that day in the bedroom, the way he looked at Isolde changed completely. Before, he was looking at an adopted daughter. Now, he was looking straight at the designated successor for the Vance Corporation's ultimate asset protection plan. Fake daughter magically turns into a genuine daughter-in-law. The premium meat stays perfectly cooking inside its own pot. The old man was absolutely thrilled. Because of that, he started dropping hints, testing the waters, and aggressively playing matchmaker. During dinner, Dad deliberately spun the Lazy Susan to stop Isolde's favorite sweet and sour pork ribs right in front of me. Caspian, my boy, your second sister has been working so hard on her paintings lately. Pick a nice piece of meat for her so she can keep her strength up. While watching TV, Dad literally shoved my fourth sister Pippa out of the way, forcing me and Isolde to sit shoulder to shoulder on the long sofa. My scalp went completely numb. I could only frantically play deaf and dumb. I have zero idea how to handle this kind of stuff. In my past life, I was a total try-hard grind king. In this life, I'm a ruthless CEO fighting off old business foxes every single day. You ask me to handle a multi-billion-dollar corporate merger? I wouldn't even blink. But you ask me to face a cold, aloof beauty who secretly has a massive crush on me? That is way outside my syllabus. I plan to just keep playing dead like this until late night on the weekend hit. I was a bit thirsty that night. I'd totally run out of cola in my room, so I had no choice but to head downstairs to the kitchen to grab some water. But the second I stepped out onto the second-floor terrace, I caught the faint, rich scent of red wine. Isolde was out there, wearing a sleek silk nightgown. Her bare feet were resting on the plush wool carpet, a half-empty glass of red wine in her hand as she leaned against the railing, just enjoying the midnight breeze. Artists need their inspiration, right? And an occasional drink was exactly where she got hers. I already knew this. Hearing my footsteps, she slowly turned her head, and right there in the pale moonlight, I saw two obvious, deep flushes of drunken red plastered across her normally icy cheeks. Her usually cold, unreadable eyes were now clouded over with a soft, watery mist. I swallowed hard, breaking the silence awkwardly. You're still awake." The second the words left my mouth, I turned to bolt. "Caspian Vance," she called out. It sent a shiver down my spine. She didn't call me her little brother. She used my full name. Thanks to the alcohol, her usually icy tone had melted into a soft, husky whisper. I froze in my tracks. She set her wineglass down and closed the distance between us, her tall, 5'7" frame towering just enough to be intimidating. Up close, her signature scent hit me, a dizzying mix of fresh oil paints and expensive red wine. "You've been hiding from me for a whole week." She stared deep into my eyes, clearly running on liquid courage. She was finally tearing away her cold, untouchable disguise. Sure, I hadn't actually stolen her underwear, but I hadn't denied it either. Honestly, I didn't want to. She took a deep, shaky breath, like she was gathering every ounce of strength in her body. "Caspian Vance, I like you," she confessed. "And not the way an older sister likes her younger brother. I like you as a man." My brain totally short-circuited. Talk about throwing a massive fastball. If you think it's disgusting, or if you just can't accept it, I'll pack my bags and move out of the Vance estate tomorrow. Her eyes dropped to the floor, her fingers gripping the hem of her silk nightgown like her life depended on it. Her knuckles were completely white. Seeing her try to act so tough while looking incredibly vulnerable sent my mind completely into overdrive. Let's be brutally honest here. If my eldest sister, Serafina, had been the one saying this to me, I would have jumped off the terrace right then and there, bought a standing room only ticket on a midnight train, and fled the entire planet. Serafina was the one who practically raised me. She tutored me, forced awful herbal medicine down my throat, and loved me fiercely, like her very own son. That would be completely messed up, but Isolde was entirely different. Thanks to this trashy system setup, she was destined to be a pawn for the so-called true young master. Knowing that, I had deliberately kept my distance from her ever since we were kids. We were honestly never that close. Plus, her personality had always been ice cold. The whole sibling bond between us was practically non-existent anyway. But most importantly, I took a long, hard look at the girl standing in front of me. Absolutely exquisite features, a mature, breathtakingly cold beauty, and a completely top-tier aura. Holy crap. She was basically a precision sniper strike, aimed perfectly at every single one of my weak spots, hitting aesthetics I've carried across 2 lifetimes. Plus, we had zero blood relation. Even the legal hurdle of being on the same household registry was a total joke for a powerhouse like the Vance family. She could just move out, change her paperwork, and come right back under a totally different status. And besides, when a gorgeous girl takes the initiative and puts herself out there to this extent, if I acted like some overly sensitive coward and rejected her, I'd be worse than a total loser. "Who said anything about chasing you away?" I let out a heavy sigh, reached over, and gently took the goblet from her hand, setting it down onto the table. "If you can't handle your liquor, you really shouldn't drink so much." I looked at her completely stunned expression, feeling my own face heat up as I awkwardly scratched the back of my head. I dropped my voice to a nervous whisper. Look. I've never actually been in a relationship before, but we can try." Isolde's head snapped up instantly, and in those misty, watery eyes burst forth the absolute brightest light I had ever seen in my entire life. And just like that, incredibly logically, yet ridiculously awkwardly, our relationship seamlessly transitioned from fake siblings straight into true lovers. The shift didn't feel jarring at all, mostly because Isolde kept up her flawless, icy demeanor whenever we were around other people. It was only behind closed doors, when it was just the two of us, that she would finally drop the mask and reveal the incredibly sweet, naive charm of a girl fiercely in love. This insane, extreme contrast was incredible. For an 18-year-old bachelor like me, single since birth, it felt like spring was finally blooming right inside my chest. But you know what they say. You can't hide a raging fire with a flimsy piece of paper. Especially when you're dealing with the ultimate, little brother-obsessed radar possessed by my eldest sister. Serafina had been living in a luxury flat near the company for 2 straight weeks, keeping a hawk's eye on the South City Energy project. After finally securing the massive deal, she decided to reward herself with a well-deserved 2 days off. Heart bursting with joy, she practically stormed right back into the old family manor, fully prepared to aggressively snuggle her precious, invincible 18-year-old baby brother until he couldn't breathe. But the exact second she pushed open the grand living room doors, she froze. She saw me and Isolde sitting together on the sofa, watching a movie. And we weren't just watching a movie. Isolde's head was resting incredibly naturally on my shoulder, while I was casually peeling a grape and popping it right into her mouth. Clatter. My eldest sister's Hermes bag, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, slipped from her fingers and crashed straight onto the hardwood floor. I swear to God, the look on Serafina's face in that precise moment was pure devastation. It was like she'd spent 18 years raising a premium, golden crop, only to watch a very pretty pig from her own backyard totally devour it. The sky completely shattered. Caspian, Vance. Her voice vibrated with sheer, unadulterated shock. Half an hour later, almost our entire family gathered in the study except for our 4th sister, who was still at school, and the sibling taking a nap in her room. Once everyone was caught up on the shocking cause and effect of our new relationship status, we conveniently left out the whole underwear incident. That detail was just a little too scandalous for family ears. And after Dad Archibald gave it his absolute blessing, declaring this union was the key to the 1,000-year everlasting prosperity of the Vance Corporation, the utter shock on my eldest sister's face finally started to fade. She looked at me, then glanced over at Isolde, whose face was completely flushed as she stared down at her shoes. Sure, the fact that her little brother was suddenly turning into her brother-in-law was a massive pill to swallow, but once she really thought about it carefully. First off, keeping the gold in the family meant our massive fortune wasn't bleeding out into some stranger's pockets. Second, her precious baby brother wouldn't be scammed by some gold-digging trash off the streets. And third, she had literally watched Isolde grow up. Her character was rock solid. My eldest sister let out a long, heavy sigh, marched over to playfully pinch my cheek, and then warmly grabbed Isolde's hand. Fine, she smiled. Since you two are crazy about each other, how could your big sister ever stand in the way and break up you lovebirds? But Caspian, if you ever dare to make Isolde cry in the future, I swear, as your big sister, I will be the first one to make you pay. And just like that, the deal was sealed. Everyone was thrilled. Bring on the celebration. In that exact moment, every single core conflict in the Vance household evaporated into thin air, leaving behind just one ticking time bomb who was still completely clueless. That evening, right at dinner time, Alara was humming a happy little tune as she practically skipped down the stairs. She sat down at the dining table, practically vibrating with excitement. She scanned the room and immediately noticed our eldest sister was home. On top of that, Dad had specially ordered the kitchen to open a top-tier bottle of wine. The atmosphere in the room felt incredibly triumphant. Alara's eyes lit up like a Christmas tree. It's happening. It's finally happening, she thought. Eldest sister is finally home. Dad and big sis are finally going to hold a ruthless tribunal for Isolde, that perverted fake daughter, and execute absolute family justice. Then, Dad raised his wine glass, standing tall with a glowing, joyous red face. I gathered everyone together today because I have massive, incredible news to announce. Caspian and Isolde are officially a couple. As soon as Caspian graduates from college, our family is throwing the wedding of the century. Poof! A huge mouthful of soup Alara had just sipped sprayed directly across the table. Cough, cough, cough. She shot up so violently and so fast that her heavy chair brutally scraped against the floor, letting out an ear-piercing screech. She stared dead ahead at Isolde, who was sweetly holding her glass and clinking it against mine. Alara's eyeballs looked like they were about to pop straight out of her skull. Her voice violently shook as she desperately squeezed out a single word. What? 10,000 screaming alpacas were absolutely stampeding through Alara's shattered brain. A joyous event? Together? A wedding? She had stolen underwear. She had spread filthy rumors. She had played the ultimate pitiful victim. She had completely racked her brains trying to permanently kick Isolde out of this house. And the result? The absolute mind-numbing result was that the Vance family didn't just keep the pervert around. They actually went right with the flow, instantly upgrading the fake daughter into the genuine, undeniable daughter-in-law. And the ultimate fuse that set this whole thing off was actually her own self-righteous, catch them in the act theatrical masterpiece. Alara's entire world completely collapsed in that exact second. Right then, she just wanted to crawl under the table and desperately search for her dropped clown nose. It finally hit her hard in this ruthless family. She wasn't just a pathetic dancing clown. She was a gold medal professional matchmaker. She looked at my arrogant, half-smiling smirk, and then looked at Dad and eldest sister's overwhelmingly satisfied attitude toward Isolde. A crushing sense of ultimate powerlessness and sheer, icy terror furiously welled up from the very bottom of her heart. Caspian Vance. This absolute demon not only controlled all the money and power in the Vance Empire, but now Isolde had officially become the boss's untouchable wife, safely resting under his absolute protection. Just what the hell was she even supposed to take revenge on anymore? What could she possibly even use to fight back? She was completely powerless now, nothing more than a pathetic little earthworm pinched right at its most vital nerve. Dad's deeply concerned voice suddenly drifted over. Alara, what's wrong? Did you choke? Alara's legs instantly went completely soft. She slumped heavily back into her chair, her head bowed in absolute defeat, tears frantically swirling in her eyes, yet she forcefully choked them back. Nothing. From that day on, Alara was wildly more well-behaved in this mansion than the actual servants, let alone ever daring to target Isolde again. She would literally walk the absolute longest way around, terrified to even make eye contact with me. Her one and only desperate wish every single day was that I wouldn't brutally kick her back to the countryside, praying she could just safely and peacefully coast her way to an Oakhaven University diploma. It is all finally, completely over. After dinner, Isolde and I casually held hands, taking a relaxing walk down the tree-lined path of Oakhaven University to digest our meal. A crisp autumn wind blew past, sending golden leaves falling in flurries all around us. I took a long, deep breath of the crisp air, heavily tainted with the sweet, nostalgic scent of blooming osmanthus. I glanced back at the cold, stunningly beautiful, yet perfectly obedient true girlfriend standing right beside me. Looking back on these insane 18 years, I had ruthlessly guarded against the true young master. I usurped my own biological dad's empire, completely forced my eldest sister to turn into a ruthless workaholic. Though, to be fair, she was quite happy to actually do it. I single-handedly pushed the Vance Corporation to become the undisputed #1 in Oakhaven City. Hell, I even wrote out my entire will perfectly in advance. And the ultimate result? The system turning out to be some absolutely mentally challenged male protagonist cultivation system. The highly anticipated true young master turned out to be a two-faced, green tea sister who only knew how to steal freaking underwear. And that tragic fake daughter who suffered a brutally miserable ending in the original plot? She ended up becoming my loyal wife. I furiously fought an epic, blood-pumping battle of wits and sheer courage against thin air for 18 solid years, only to end up with the unimaginably tragic fate of getting both the absolute perfect girl and all the money in the world. A total win in both love and my career. I sighed, gripping my old life. Or technically, gripping Ara's hand a little tighter. This messy, completely absurd life is actually pretty damn good. The old me is dead. My name is Isolde. To everyone else, I'm the cold, unapproachable Ice Queen older sister who doesn't care about a single thing except painting. But only I know the truth. Hidden deep in my heart is a shockingly dark, almost twisted secret. I'm in love with Caspian Vance, my own younger brother. I honestly have no idea when this feeling started to rot and twist into something else entirely. Maybe it was when we were kids, and he was forced to chug down that pitch-black, disgusting bowl of herbal medicine our oldest sister made. It was clearly so bitter his face scrunched up, but he still tried to act completely cool and unfazed. Back then, I would always sneak his favorite mint candy into his palm. He'd just give me this look, and quietly eat it. That little shared secret, belonging only to the two of us, made me greedy for so much more. Or maybe it was when I first saw him show off his absolutely terrifying talent for business. While other kids his age were still playing in the dirt or getting into stupid street fights, he was already in the study, pointing at a massive stack of English NASDAQ financial reports, literally dictating empires. He was like a natural-born king in our house. He never even had to raise his voice. Yet, step by step, without ever tipping his hand, he completely seized control of the Vance Corporation. He wasn't actually all that close to me. In fact, a lot of times it felt like he was purposely keeping his distance. But he unconditionally supported every single one of my passions. The other elders in the Vance family thought painting was a total waste of time. But Caspian, with a casual wave of his hand, he built me the absolute best art studio in Oak Haven City, and burned through piles of cash just to host exhibitions for me. Hell, the very first thing he did after taking full power was unilaterally tear up my arranged corporate marriage contract with Thaddeus Sterling. That day, he just leaned back on the sofa and casually said, "What kind of utter trash is the Sterling family? The daughters of the Vance family will never be used as bargaining chips for arranged marriages." Looking at his sharp, intensely dominant side profile in that exact moment, I felt like my heart had been violently struck by lightning. It was beating out of control, but I had to desperately choke down those feelings. I was the second miss of the Vance family, and he was the third young master. We were legal, biological siblings on paper. Every single late night, when I obsessively sketched his silhouette on my drawing pad, I completely loathed myself. Isolde. "You are such a freak," I'd tell myself. "You're actually obsessing over your own younger brother." I really thought I would just carry this sickening secret to my grave, painting in total isolation for the rest of my life. That is, until the night Ara showed up. My father, with red, teary eyes, dropped the bomb. I wasn't the biological daughter of the Vance family. We had been switched at the hospital all those years ago. Caspian Vance and I had absolutely zero blood relation. In that moment, our oldest sister gasped in shock. Our fourth sister was frozen. Caspian looked like he had just been struck by lightning. Though, knowing him, he was probably completely unbothered on the inside. As for me, on the surface, I just gave a faint, "Oh," and quietly walked back to my art studio. But God, only God knows the truth. The very second that studio door clicked shut, the hand I used to grip my paintbrush was violently shaking from pure, unadulterated excitement. I'm not biologically related. Caspian and I share zero blood. The crushing moral chains that had suffocated me for so many years were instantly shattered into dust by Ara's arrival. If I didn't have to keep up my cold, Ice Queen persona, I literally would have sprinted out there and bowed down to thank Ara. But right after the thrill wore off, an even deeper, darker fear set in. I still didn't dare to confess. Caspian was way too rational, way too smart. If I just blurted out my feelings, would he think my sisterly affection over the past 12 years was just some sick, fake disguise? Would he think I was completely insane and just cut me out of his life forever? I felt like a desperate gambler, standing on the absolute edge of a cliff, clutching all my chips in my sweating hands, endlessly terrified to place the final bet. That is, until that absolute idiot handed me the perfect opportunity to test the waters. When Ara stole a pair of underwear from Caspian's balcony just to frame me, I didn't panic. Not even a little bit. Ara had no clue, but I knew for a fact that the mansion's blind spot-free security cameras had recorded her pathetic little stunt clear as day. So, when she led an entire mob charging into my bedroom, flipping out that pair of men's underwear from under my pillow, screaming herself hoarse, and accusing me of being some freak plotting against my own brother, I was perfectly calm. Besides, it's not like we're blood relatives anyway. If Caspian didn't know the real truth, if he actually looked at me with disgust and nausea, I could easily just pull up the hallway security footage, coldly slap it right in Ara's smug face, prove my total innocence, and go back to playing the pure, untouchable, fake second sister. But I decided to take a gamble instead. Not only did I completely refuse to defend myself, but I deliberately tilted my head up with an incredibly complicated expression, a guilty, vulnerable look. as if my deepest, darkest desires had just been dragged into the light. I stared deeply into his eyes for 3 agonizing seconds, and then swiftly looked away. Let's call this a strategic retreat to secure the ultimate win. I watched, breathless, as Caspian's hand froze midair, right as he reached for his phone. His usually sharp, scheming eyes widened. A sudden storm of shock, utter confusion, and pure, frantic panic completely took over his gaze. I knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted to whip out that phone and show the footage to clear my name. And honestly, I could already guess why he'd been digging through the security tapes in the first place. It was because, aside from the underwear stashed under my pillow, I actually was the one who stole the rest of the stuff. But I just stood there, watching. He never pulled up the video. He never used it to slap Heir right in the face with the truth. Instead, like a cornered, terrified rabbit staring down a ghost, he just bolted. The second Dad stopped talking, Caspian was gone. Staring at his frantic, retreating back, I couldn't stop the corners of my mouth from curling up into a slow, wicked smile. Right then and there, I knew I had already won half the war. For the next few days, he dodged me like the plague. He was absolutely terrified to make a move. So, I had no choice but to rely on some wildly unconventional methods. Waiting for the exact moment the maids were busy cleaning, I quietly slipped straight into his bedroom and swiped every single ice-cold soda right out of his mini fridge. I didn't leave a single drop behind. Oh, and while I was at it, I buried my face in his pillow and took a deep, lingering breath. I knew his routine perfectly. At midnight, right after his marathon gaming sessions, he'd be parched. He would absolutely have to drag himself downstairs just to find a glass of water. And there I was, dressed in my most dangerously figure-hugging silk nightgown, swirling half a glass of rich red wine. I stood right there on the second-floor terrace, the exact spot he had to walk past, silently waiting for my prey. The wine was just there to give me a little liquid courage, but it also gave him the perfect excuse to let his guard down. When he finally stood in front of me, totally stiff and clearly desperate to run away, I let the buzz of the alcohol take over. I finally let out the words that had been violently brewing in my heart for countless days and agonizing nights. Caspian Vance, I like you. And no, not the kind of soft, sibling love an older sister feels for a younger brother. It's the intense, undeniable desire a woman feels for a man. Notice how I didn't call him little brother? I used his full name. That was a very deliberate, clever little trap. My heart was pounding so hard my palms were completely slick with sweat. But then, he just let out a soft sigh, gently pulled the wine glass out of my hand, and whispered in a deep, husky voice. Look, I've never actually been in a relationship before, but we can try. Right then, in that exact second, across the dark, barren, frozen wasteland of my scarred heart, I heard it. The beautiful, deafening sound of a million flowers violently blooming back to life. Everything that happened after that went so impossibly smooth, it honestly felt like a fever dream. Sure, eldest sister totally lost her mind and cried for half the day, but eventually, she just held her nose and swallowed the truth. Her precious little adopted sister was magically transforming into her official sister-in-law. As for our dad, he was grinning so hard his face looked like it might split. His brain was already totally consumed by the brilliant, money-making blueprint of keeping all the family assets tightly locked in-house. And then there was Ara, the absolute star of the show who unknowingly made all this happen. She was completely, utterly defeated. For the rest of her pathetic life, she'll probably never figure out how her meticulously planned, grand little trap to ruin us ended up being the exact spark that triggered our engagement. Walking down the tree-lined campus paths of Oak Haven University, a crisp autumn breeze gently brushed past us. The cool air was completely filled with the sweet, faint scent of blooming osmanthus. I slowly turned my head, gazing at the handsome guy walking right beside me. His hand was warmly wrapped around mine, even as he was quietly grumbling about his terrible losing streak in his game. He was finally, completely, and utterly mine. Feeling a surge of warmth, I slightly tightened my grip on his fingers. Deep in my eyes, there was a soft, flowing current of tender affection that even I didn't realize was there. Catching my intense stare, he turned his head and blinked. Hey, what's wrong? The corners of my lips curled up naturally. My usually cold, clear voice totally softened, carrying a bright, joyful little laugh as I replied. Nothing at all. I was just thinking, the weather today is absolutely perfect.